Under a starry sky, two men share a drink. One of them, Guranga, lifts his cup, lamenting that after decades of waiting, all he gets is a single drink. He calls the other man cold-hearted and pours him another. Reflecting on their past, Ranga remarks how young they were when they first met, wondering where the years went. The scene shifts to decades ago, showing a younger version of the man asking Ranga to use the Great Regression technique and send him to the past. Ranga was shocked. The technique, a monumental achievement of the Gu family, had been researched for centuries. Yet, it was considered nearly impossible to perform because the 5 required materials were thought unattainable. Smiling slyly, Ranga had agreed to use the technique, but only if the man could gather the materials. Decades passed. Against all odds, the man returned, having collected everything. Ranga notes that obtaining the final material, the secret demonic soul, had taken so long he'd assumed the man had died. Pouring another drink, he shakes his head in disbelief, asking how he managed to gather it all. The one-armed man takes a sip and confesses that the cursed nature of the materials made him consider killing Ranga along the way. Ranga stares at him, commenting on how much he's changed. His white hair and hardened demeanor are signs of the toll his journey took. Ranga then asks the pressing question, why does he want to go back to the past? The man slams his cup down, his cold tone cutting through the air, revenge. Ranga is stunned and asks if the man's current strength isn't enough. The man confirms it isn't. Ranga presses further, curious about whom he despises so deeply. The man glares, naming Hogi, a figure known for slaughtering the leaders of the 3 most powerful factions in Murim, including the Heavenly Demon. Hogi was a living legend, the strongest in history, and the man reveals a dark truth. The Heavenly Demon was his father. The man clarifies he isn't seeking revenge for his father's death or for his sly brother's demise there. Instead, he seeks vengeance because Hogi massacred everyone. Servants, cooks, children, even the cats and dogs. Ranga, incredulous, remarks that it doesn't sound like something Hogi would do, but the man dismisses his doubts. He declares that in this era, he cannot kill Hogi, but in the past, he will. And before doing so, he'll demand to know why someone so powerful needed to kill innocents. Ranga, staring intently, offers a request. If the technique works and he reaches the past, he should find Ranga and stop him from getting married. The man, stunned by the sudden shift, bursts into laughter, but Ranga insists he's serious. He pleads, begging him to make sure he stays single. The man promises with a grin and follows Ranga to the ritual site. Struggling to stand, the man assures Ranga he's fine despite his injuries, noting that losing an arm and an eye was a small price for the secret demonic soul. As the materials are gathered, the room fills with a blue aura. Ranga chants, the artifacts resonate, and a portal opens. Amazed, Ranga exclaims that it worked, but turning back, he sees the man unable to move. Realizing his chance, Ranga apologizes, planning to use the portal himself. But as he steps forward, his body freezes. The man, who had struck his pressure points, rises and seizes him by the throat, demanding to know how he could betray him. Ranga sobs, apologizing profusely, admitting he lost his rationality. The man, filled with mercy, releases him, acknowledging their bond and understanding his desperation. Suddenly, time halts and a deity appears, declaring the man has passed the ultimate test, a life devoted to a singular purpose, marked by sacrifice and forgiveness. The deity commends his efforts and grants his wish to return to the past. As time resumes, Ranga begs him not to forget their promise, and the man smiles. The man stepped into the portal, and everything faded into an all-encompassing white. When the light subsided, he opened his eyes to find himself in his younger body, standing on a platform before a crowd of people. As he adjusted to his surroundings, his gaze drifted upward to a towering statue. A quiet realization washed over him. He had done it. He had truly returned to the past. As he marveled at the moment, a sudden presence prickled at the edge of his awareness. He looked up sharply, his eyes locking onto a man watching him from a distance. The man's gaze was intense, laden with complicated emotions. Slowly, the realization struck. This was his father. The heavenly demon's eyes reflected surprise, though his expression remained composed. The man, smiling warmly, held his gaze for a moment before someone from the crowd broke the tension. "How long are you going to keep us waiting?" a voice shouted impatiently. The speaker slammed his sword into the ground for emphasis. "It's time to fight." The man exhaled deeply, his voice steady as he replied, "I see. I remember this day." His thoughts took him back to the moment, the day of the new demon skirmish. He explained to himself that his father, the heavenly demon, had announced that the next cult leader wouldn't be limited to his own bloodline. The declaration had caused a storm of dissent within the cult, for it meant anyone strong enough could rise to claim the position. To prove his seriousness, his father had initiated the skirmish, a competition among leaders and candidates. The victor of the skirmish would earn the right to challenge one of the heavenly demon's two sons. Winning that duel would grant them a single wish, to be fulfilled by the heavenly demon himself. As his opponent stepped forward, he mocked the man, telling him to give up while he still had the chance. The man's blank expression unnerved his challenger. I remember this clearly, he thought. The insult, the arrogance. Choosing me meant he saw me as the weaker target, an easier opponent than my older brother. His memories sharpened. His opponent had bribed a cook to lace his food with energy-dispersing poison. Unable to use his inner energy, he had lost the match that day. When he tried to explain to his father, his protests were met with silence and a look of cold disappointment. The shame of that moment had haunted him, a turning point that led to his loss of status in the succession war. His opponent sneered. "Are you distracted already?" he taunted. The man's eyes narrowed. "What was your name again?" he asked, his tone calm yet piercing. Flustered, the challenger hesitated before replying. "Gaeong-ho," he said, puffing out his chest. Recognition flashed in the man's mind. "Gaeong-ho," he echoed, his voice low but resolute. "One of the 7 disciples of Gwenna, the Blood Heaven Sword Demon. The 5th disciple, Pango." Pango smirked, misinterpreting the statement as fear. "You must be confident to mess with me," he sneered. The man glanced briefly at his father, his eyes reading the silent acknowledgement there. He realized now in hindsight that his father had known about the poison all along. His father had been watching, waiting to see how he would navigate such a predicament. Drawing from the knowledge of his past life, the man assessed the situation. Defeating Pango without inner energy would be easy, but he needed to conceal the extent of his abilities. Raising his fist for all to see, he declared boldly, "I will fight him without using any energy." A ripple of shock passed through the crowd. Whispers turned to shouts, and soon they were chanting his name. Pango paled, sensing the crowd's momentum shifting. Hastily, he announced, "Fine. I won't use energy either." His words were met with groans and jeers. "What's the point, then? It'll be boring," someone shouted. Frustrated, Pango gripped his blade tightly. "My sword can cut anything it strikes," he boasted. The man, still adjusting to the foreign sensation of his younger body, flexed his fingers and tested his movements. "It's been a while since I moved like this," he thought. "Draw your weapon." Pango barked, pointing his sword directly at him. "I won't need it," the man replied with quiet confidence. The crowd erupted into laughter. "He's looking down on you, Pango," someone jeered. Pango's face flushed with embarrassment. "I won't kill you since you're the leader's son," he growled, leaping forward with a ferocious swing. "But I'll definitely take an arm." The man sidestepped the attack with ease. "This body reacts instinctively," he mused as he dodged another strike. Pango lunged again, aiming a powerful overhead slash. The man saw his opening and charged forward, his elbow smashing into Pango's chest. The man followed up with an uppercut that sent teeth flying. As Pango wavered, the man grabbed his collar and unleashed a relentless barrage, punches to the chest, a devastating blow to the kidney. Blood spattered as Pango crumpled to his knees. Gripping Pango's hand, the man asked coldly, "Is this the one you used to poison me?" Before Pango could respond, the man shattered his elbow with a precise knee strike, bone protruding grotesquely as Pango screamed in agony. The crowd watched in stunned silence. Looking down at his defeated opponent, the man declared, "I've returned to the past. This time, no one will control how I live." His father raises his hand, and everyone waits in anticipation. He announces that he will grant his son a wish and asks what he desires. Usually, people request a weapon or a martial arts manual, and that's likely what everyone expects him to choose as well. This time, however, he decides to follow his instincts. He tells his father that he wishes to go on a hunt with him. His father is surprised, and even Pango appears confused about why he would ask for something so basic. His father seeks confirmation, asking if he really just wants to go on a hunt. Muguk smiles, explaining that he has heard stories of his father's enjoyment of hunting in his younger days, and he would like to learn the skill from him personally. His father's eyes light up with happiness at this reply, and he stands, announcing they will depart tomorrow. He watched him take his leave as all of the demon supremes bowed to their master. Muguk observed his father's departure when he heard Pango mocking him, saying he couldn't believe Muguk had made such a foolish wish. When Muguk asked for his name again, Pango shouted that he would kill him. Muguk calmly replied that he didn't plan to live recklessly like the others. Back in his room, Muguk studied himself in the mirror. Though he was young again, he found it difficult to reconcile this appearance with the older version of himself he had grown accustomed to. He pondered Magi's whereabouts, reasoning that if he could find and eliminate Magi before he became powerful, this matter could be resolved quickly. The challenge was that Magi was difficult to track down. He had appeared in Jianghu as if falling from the sky after destroying the Murim alliance, the unorthodox alliance, and the demonic cult. Afterward, Magi had hidden himself from the world, leaving no trace of information. Mugak knew that attempting to locate Magi by broadcasting his name would be a dangerous provocation. Instead, he decided his primary goal should be to become stronger than Magi. As he was building up his determination, a woman's voice called out to him, praising his fighting that day. He turned in surprise, recognizing Leon, his bodyguard. Mugak reflected that he hadn't known at the time that her large size was due to the martial arts she had learned for his sake, the body petrification technique. This rare skill allowed the user to make their body as hard as rock, though it had the significant drawback of increasing the user's width considerably. She had sacrificed herself by jumping in front of Mwa's attack to protect him. Looking at her with gentle eyes, Mugak commented on the pleasantness of her voice. He approached her, expressing regret that he had taken her dedication for granted, much like people do with the air they breathe. Standing before her, he noted that she was larger than he remembered and smiled warmly, causing her confusion. He explained how everyone had predicted and would become one of the world's greatest beauties, but she had suddenly bulked up and declared she would protect him. He hadn't realized back then how much she had cried after gaining weight, nor had he noticed her swollen eyes from tears. He wondered about her feelings, having sacrificed her potential beauty for his protection, and admitted he might have treated her worse after her transformation. With regret in his eyes, Mugak promised to eliminate the side effects causing her weight gain. When she asked if he was alright, he assured her he was better than ever. She noted his strange behavior, and he acknowledged that, as expected, she could instantly detect his changes. Grabbing his sword, he told her he would show her something even more unusual. At a restaurant, while the staff greeted him, Mugak confronted a specific man about poisoning his meal. When the man denied it, Mugak asked if he had gambled away the 300 yong he had received. He explained that the man had a gambling addiction and had squandered not only his parents' money but also funds borrowed from friends. The man admitted his mistake, confessing that Pango had paid him. In response, Mugak swiftly dealt with him using his blade, condemning him for daring to poison others' food as a cook. When the older man, Lim, tried to take responsibility, Mugak questioned his logic. He asked if that meant everything in the cult was his father's fault. When Lim disagreed, Mugak pointed out the inconsistency and casually ordered shredded chicken noodles for dinner. Lim mentioned that Mugak had eaten this dish just days ago, to which Mugak smiled and said it felt like decades to him. The next dawn, outside the Heavenly Demon Pavilion, his father questioned why Mugak had brought so much equipment for what was planned as a single day's hunt. Mugak suggested they might want to extend their stay if they enjoyed themselves, earning a sharp glance from his father, who called it an ambitious dream. In the mountain forest, his father acknowledged Mugak's hidden skills. When Mugak compared himself to a beast hiding its claws rather than a hissing cat, his father questioned why a beast would need to hide. Mugak admitted he hadn't considered that perspective. His father then inquired about Mugak's mastery of the soaring sword art, an advanced martial art passed down through the heavenly demon bloodline, similar to those practiced by the demon supremes. After Mugak claimed complete mastery, his father launched a surprise attack, which Mugak narrowly dodged. His father explained that successfully avoiding the strike proved his mastery, while failure would have been the price of lying. Mugak joked about preserving his face, which resembled his father's. For the first time, his father offered genuine praise for mastering the technique at such a young age, leaving Mugak pleasantly surprised and grateful. At the forest floor, Mugak's father examined tracks carefully. When Mugak inquired about who taught him tracking, his father revealed that his older brother had been his teacher. Surprised to learn of an uncle's existence, Mugak listened as his father disclosed that he had killed his brother when he was around Mugak's age. Carefully choosing his words, Mugak praised his father's actions, noting that otherwise he wouldn't have been born. His father glanced at him before continuing their walk. Mugak spoke thoughtfully about how fighting family must have wounded his father deeply, drawing from his past life's observations that the strongest people often carry the deepest scars. His father admitted that at the time, he had found no other solution to win the successor war. Gripping his fist, Mugak expressed hope that his father wouldn't expect him to find alternatives where he couldn't. He acknowledged that such consideration was unnecessary, given his brother's vicious and cruel nature. His father's eyes held a hint of sadness as he chided Mugak for speaking ill of his brother in his absence. The scene shifted to another mountain range where they ran upward. Mugak, keeping pace, shared that he had never married in his past life, making him curious about what kind of existence he represented to his father. Reaching the summit, he asked about their purpose there. His father simply stated it was their dinner. Mugak quickly readied his shortbow, but his father challenged him to kill something he couldn't even see. Following his father's instructions, Mugak closed his eyes to sense his surroundings. He explained that martial masters could detect opponents through air vibrations, commonly known as energy flow. Currently, he could only sense his father's presence. His father guided him to extend his energy in a thin, unbroken line, likening it to pulling thread from a ball of yarn. As the energy formed from his body, Muguk confirmed he had reached something. Through careful exploration, he identified it as either a boar or bear, noting the stiff fur and long body. His father confirmed it was indeed a boar, impressed by Muguk's accurate assessment at such a distance. Later that evening by the campfire, his father questioned Muguk's cooking skills. When Muguk claimed he learned from books, his father pointed out that practical skill differed from book knowledge. Muguk smiled, admitting he performed this task countless times before. He revealed that he had carefully prepared everything, including their seating arrangements, to win his father's favor. When his father asked if impressing him was the only reason for the hunt, Muguk responded truthfully that he knew such tactics wouldn't work. He explained he could become the successor without help, but he had two specific reasons for wanting this hunt. First, he sought to learn and grow stronger under his father's guidance, a goal he was already achieving. His father inquired about his plans after gaining strength. Muguk carefully explained that he wasn't seeking strength to become the heavenly demon, as his father remained healthy and strong. Instead, he wished to learn the heavenly demon's martial arts as a successor, without wasting his youth trying to take his father's position. He emphasized his need to master the 9 calamities demonic art quickly, acknowledging that even his father, who had mastered it, had fallen to moi. When asked about his second reason, Muguk smiled warmly, expressing his simple desire to spend time alone with his father, something they'd never done before. His father's response was a slight smile, calling it a useless emotion that could get him killed. Muguk defended his sentiment, pointing out the value of learning from the world's strongest person. His father responded with a subtle nod of approval. The next morning, as Muguk prepared to leave, his father insisted they couldn't depart without hunting a tiger, since they'd come out to hunt with the heavenly demon. They ventured deep into a bamboo forest, where his father instructed Muguk to sense the wind and infuse his energy into it, a technique Muguk had never encountered in his past training. Through careful concentration, Muguk discovered that the key wasn't to ride the wind but to entangle his energy with it. His energy followed the wind's path until he detected a tiger, causing him to exclaim in surprise. His father used this moment to teach him about maintaining multiple energy lines to increase survival chances. That night, Muguk produced strong liquor as his trump card. His father drank it easily, leading to a deeper conversation about having a vicious heart versus drinking abilities. When asked if he could kill his own father to survive, Muguk denied it, though internally he acknowledged this as a lie. In truth, with sufficient reason, he knew he would act decisively, regardless of their fresh bond. Back at Muguk's house, he reflected on his intensive training. After several days of practice, he had mastered infusing his energy into the wind and could maintain 3 to 4 energy lines simultaneously. This unexpected lesson from his father felt like gaining an extra life. The ability to detect approaching enemies would prove invaluable. He set his sights on maintaining 10 or more lines simultaneously, which could potentially neutralize any stealth techniques. As he contemplated the past, Muguk recalled how even his skilled father had fallen to Magi through an infiltration of the Heavenly Demon Pavilion. He detailed the fortress's impressive defenses, 3 barrier formations, 6 trap formations, and elite guards, including the 8 Demon Supremes positioned strategically around the compound. The Northern Heavens Swords family's demonic swordsmen, led by the One Sword Supreme. The Southern Heavens Blade family's demonic bladesmen, commanded by Chimpa, the Blood Heavens Bladesmen. The Eastern Fist faction's Iron Fist Warriors, under the Fist Demon. The Western Illusion Formation, guided by the Soul-Stealing Demon. The Faceless Swordsman in the Northeast, following the Evil Smiling Demon. The Drunken Swordsman in the Southeast, with the Demonic Drunkard. The Poison Fangs in the Southwest, researchers of toxins led by the Poison King. The Northwest's Crazy Monks, followers of the Demonic Buddha. Muguk had originally believed the enemy had breached the outer defenses, but he later discovered this wasn't true. He became convinced that one or more of the 8 Supremes had betrayed them, allowing Magi access to his father. Their subsequent actions confirmed his suspicions. After his father's death, none sought revenge, and they simply dissolved the demonic cult. With determination in his eyes, Muguk resolved to use the 8 Demon Supremes to his advantage this time, knowing their futures and final moments. As he approached the door, he overheard someone mocking his dirty bulk and asking about his whereabouts in the training ground. The speaker was a bald man named Yangpa, who identified himself as a fellow disciple of Sha, just like Pango, and appeared offended by the fat comment, while Muguk emerged, asking why she had waited there during his entire training session, despite his instructions for her to go about her business. The tension was palpable as Yangpa dared to challenge Muguk, emboldened by the recent announcement that anyone in the cult could become a successor. This decree had stripped away the special status of being the heavenly demon's son, instead fueling ambitious desires among the cult members. When Muguk asked Yangpa about his intentions, the man revealed that Pango could no longer practice martial arts because of Muguk. Probing further, Muguk sarcastically asked if Yampa wanted him to check on Pango, to which Yampa bristled, demanding an apology for crippling him. Muguk saw through the facade. He recognized this as a calculated move by a disciple hoping to impress Chimpa, the Blood Heaven's bladesman, by creating an opportunity for recognition. Yampa wanted an official apology that would demonstrate his loyalty without embarrassing his master. The confrontation escalated quickly. When Yampa insulted Muguk's subordinate, Muguk demanded that Yampa apologize. Yampa mockingly referred to him as a pork chop, which pushed Muguk to draw his sword. The atmosphere became electric with tension. "Kneel and apologize or fight," Muguk declared coldly. "Your master won't be pleased if you retreat." Yampa drew his blade, boasting that as the son of the heavenly demon, he would simply take Muguk's arm instead of his life. But in a shocking moment, Muguk effortlessly avoided the attack and struck with deadly precision, killing Yampa instantly. "Your mouth caused her death," Muguk announced, his voice ice cold. "You should have apologized when you had the chance." Then, stunned by the swift violence, asked why Muguk would go so far for her. He explained that he killed someone who deserved it, dismissing her concerns about potential retaliation from the powerful demon supremes. That night, Muguk reflected on his past, the crushing defeat that had driven him to pursue regression. His moment of contemplation was interrupted by Chimpa, the Blood Heaven's bladesman, who appeared with a blade to Muguk's throat. Their subsequent conversation was a complex dance of power and perception. Chimpa drew a line in the ground, symbolizing how little Muguk's father might actually care about him. Muguk countered by drawing his own line, suggesting he would still matter to his father. The encounter ended with Chimpa mysteriously disappearing, leaving Muguk to realize he needed more training. He understood that Chimpa was far more calculated than he appeared, and this confrontation was likely a test of Muguk's potential as a successor. Later that night, Muguk meditated, practicing what he had learned from his father. While expanding his senses beyond his room, he detected something unusual. Immediately, he jumped onto the roof, where his father was waiting, his hair billowing in the wind. "I heard about you killing the disciple of the Blood Heaven's sword demon," his father said directly. Muguk explained matter-of-factly, he deserved it. His father's response was measured. Whether he deserved to die or not doesn't matter. "The Blood Heaven's sword demon has come looking for me regarding this incident." Surprise flickered across Muguk's face. His father continued, revealing that the demon wanted him to punish Muguk. Muguk believed this was a test, an attempt to probe their relationship and see how his father would respond. "I intend to punish you," his father stated. Muguk protested that there was no justification, but his father countered that justification could always be found. A tense silence descended between them. Recalling a past conversation, his father reminded Muguk of a time when he had asked which demon supreme he trusted most during their hunts, a question left unanswered until now. "I trust no one," his father admitted, "not even the demon supremes." Muguk's eyes widened. His father pressed him. "What are your true thoughts?" With careful deliberation, Muguk explained that somewhere along their path, they had lost sight of the demon's true purpose. The path of the demon, he believed, was their cult's unique ability to defeat absolute evil, an evil so profound that even demons would turn away. "The Orthodox faction cannot handle this evil," Muguk argued. "We are the only existence that can eliminate wickedness by being even more wicked. We must punish ourselves to survive." His father listened, genuinely surprised. Muguk knew this perspective was something his father had never considered, wisdom gained during his wanderings through the Central Plains. "Any more arrogant thoughts?" his father asked. "No," Muguk replied. "That should suffice." The conversation shifted. His father recognized why the Blood Heaven's sword demon wanted to test Muguk, seeing either a potential successor or someone who might disrupt the cult. "The old man's demon sword has good eyes for noticing the extraordinary," Muguk remarked. Without further discussion, his father instructed Muguk to follow him to the Minor Heaven Cave, a deadly testing ground with a 50-50 survival rate. Even Muguk's ambitious brother had never dared to enter. "You'll go in without preparation," his father declared. "This is your punishment." Muguk, initially contemplating the potential danger, suddenly smirked. "I'll complete the trial faster than you did," he challenged. His father's responding grin matched Muguk's determination. "Just try to keep yourself alive," he advised. As Muguk entered the cave, he pondered the treacherous nature of this place that had claimed so many lives. In the first room, he discovered a pillar where previous challengers had left advice, along with grain balls meant to sustain him during the trial. Wasting no time, Muguk stepped into a red circle. Suddenly, mannequins emerged from the floor, each marked with red lines indicating where to strike. With precise, calculated movements, he began systematically cutting down the mannequins. After 10 grueling days, Muguk completed the first trial. Moving to the next chamber, he examined the pillar beside the door. Countless attempts were recorded, with one distinctive handwriting catching his eye: his father's notes. The subsequent room was filled with weapons, centered by a red circle. Another pillar detailed the trial's conditions: cut a ball in half within 2 hours, with a potential 20-day reprieve if he failed. A ball materialized from the floor. Muguk's initial attempts proved futile. His blade shattered against its surface. Slashing normally wouldn't work, and using sword aura seemed too simple. Studying the previous challenger's writings, he noticed his father's cryptic advice: if there's heat, you lose. Muguk realized he must complete the trial without using sword aura. He tried various weapons: sword, axe, hammer, but couldn't even scratch the ball. Frustration mounted, and he nearly surrendered to using sword aura. But memories of his father's teaching stayed his hand. Recalling his training, Muguk extended his senses, touching the ball with his awareness. A faint line appeared. Concentrating intently, he struck precisely along that invisible seam. The ball split in two. Inside, a demonic essence pill gleamed, a prize for his exceptional skill and patience. The demonic essence pill was a rare treasure, potent enough to grant tremendous energy to any demonic martial artist who consumed it. Had Muguk used enhanced sword aura, the pill would have exploded from heat. This was a reward reserved only for those who could cut the ball with pure skill. Grateful to his father's teachings, Muguk swallowed the pill and began meditating. As he absorbed its power, a surge of energy unlike anything he'd experienced before coursed through his body. What he had long lacked, raw, fundamental energy, now filled him completely. In the next room, Muguk studied the pillar's inscriptions. The trial ahead would test his ability to differentiate between life and death. A table materialized, covered in various herbs. Fortunately, Muguk's extensive searches for Ryanga's ingredients had made him an expert. He knew every herb's characteristics, understanding not just their appearance but their precise effects. This trial would be child's play. He selected the single non-poisonous herb with confidence. When another table emerged, Muguk again chose correctly, a slight smile playing across his lips. The final trial awaited, an illusory life and death trap formation where failure meant certain death. Scanning the pillar, Muguk found his father's cryptic advice: never rest. The cave transformed into a scorching desert. The sand felt impossibly real beneath his fingers. Suddenly, undead creatures surrounded him, a perfect opportunity to test his skills. Drawing his sword, he dodged attacks, counterattacked, and sliced through the undead with calculated brutality. One move decimated entire groups, yet more continued to emerge. Just when Muguk thought the trial was easy, another wave of undead materialized, promising an even greater challenge. The relentless attack raged on. Muguk began to feel the weight of exhaustion pressing down on him, but he pushed through, dodging and countering with precision. One by one, he sliced through the undead, his blade moving like a whirlwind of steel. Suddenly, a flurry of daggers flew toward him. With a quick spin of his sword, Muguk deflected them effortlessly. Finally, he struck down the last undead, standing victorious in the cave's eerie silence. Despite the victory, Muguk chose to stay within the cave, determined to hone his skills further. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. After 100 grueling days, he emerged from the cave, his body hardened and his resolve sharper than ever. Outside, he met his father. "I did my best," Muguk said, bowing slightly, "but I wasn't able to beat your record." His father regarded him calmly and asked, "Did you cut the stone ball the proper way?" Muguk nodded. "Thanks to your hint, I was able to complete the trial." To Muguk's surprise, his father smiled, a rare expression from the stoic leader. Before his regression, Muguk had believed his father delighted in forcing his children to fight for their lives to earn the title of successor. But now Muguk understood. His father wasn't cruel for the sake of cruelty. He was a man willing to endure even the deaths of his own children if it meant securing the cult's future. Still, his father couldn't hide his amazement. The cult's second-in-command approached to congratulate Muguk. It was none other than Sima Murim, the trusted chief advisor. Muguk bowed respectfully as Sima offered a warm smile. "It's good to see you, Muguk," Sima said. "There's something regarding the cult I'd like to discuss with you." Sima explained that they had recently received an anonymous letter. The letter claimed that corruption had infiltrated the ranks of the demonic army, one of their most vital combat groups. The demonic army's leader, Sima added, was a blood relative of the Blood Heaven Sword Demon. "This isn't the first letter," Sima continued. "We received a similar one last year and conducted a thorough investigation, but it ended in failure. The special investigator we sent was killed, and the individual responsible for his death committed suicide shortly after." Sima fixed Muguk with a steady gaze. "That's why we need you to take on the role of Special Investigation Officer and personally handle this matter." Muguk's thoughts raced. He understood the gravity of the request. Anyone caught in corruption would face execution. But uncovering such crimes wouldn't be easy. Those involved would go to any lengths to protect themselves, even if it meant targeting the heavenly demon's son. "If you send me, there's a real chance I could die," Muguk said plainly, his voice steady but firm. Sima didn't flinch. "This mission will require you to put your life on the line." Muguk glanced at his father, suspicion creeping in. This felt like another one of his father's tests. "You said you wanted to control them and hold them by their leashes," his father reminded him. "I'll do that once I become the heavenly demon," Muguk countered. His father's gaze narrowed. "Are you scared?" Muguk sighed, knowing he couldn't back out now. "If you put it like that, I can't refuse," he said. He looked at his father, a rare trace of vulnerability in his eyes. "Let's drink together. It might be my last chance." But his father declined, walking away without another word. At the investigation office, Muguk encountered Daryong, a representative from the Nirvana Pavilion. With a curious glance, Muguk asked, "What are you doing here? I thought I requested the most beautiful woman from your pavilion." Daryong smirked. "Perhaps to the chief advisor, I am the most beautiful." Muguk scoffed, choosing to ignore the quip and focus on the task at hand. As he turned to leave, Daryong followed. Stopping abruptly, Muguk asked, "Are you planning to investigate the corruption in the demonic army?" Daryong nodded. "I am." Muguk frowned. "You don't seem very enthusiastic about it." Daryong shrugged. "Even if we uncover corruption, nothing will change." "You're not afraid?" Muguk pressed. "Not at all," Daryong replied confidently. Muguk stared at him, incredulous. "The last investigator died, and that doesn't scare you?" Daryong's expression softened. "The investigator who died was my direct superior," he admitted quietly. "He was the one who taught me everything I know." Muguk was taken aback, his eyes narrowing as he studied Daryong. "I see," he murmured, a mix of respect and curiosity flickering in his gaze. As soon as Muguk arrived at the demonic dragon court, 2 guards stepped forward, blocking their path. They demanded to know where Muguk and Daryong were from. Daryong calmly introduced them, but the guards were skeptical and refused to let them pass. To clear the misunderstanding, Daryong produced the official order document. Even then, one of the guards hesitated and insisted they would need to check with their superior first. Daryong firmly reiterated that they were on an urgent investigation and had to be allowed in, but the guards persisted in their disrespectful tone, making it clear they had no intention of cooperating. Muguk, growing impatient, asked the guards if they knew who he was. When one of the guards smugly replied that they did, Muguk delivered a swift, powerful kick to his groin. The blow was so intense that foam appeared at the corner of the guard's mouth as he collapsed. Daryong stood frozen in shock. Muguk turned to him and said curtly, "Stop standing there like a statue. Let's go." Inside the building, more warriors awaited them, some casually lounging, others visibly sizing them up. Daryong once again presented the special order document, instructing the warriors to step aside. However, the warriors ignored him, and some even laughed openly. The commotion drew the attention of Captain Go Dang of the demonic army, who demanded to know what was happening. Daryong informed him that they were acting under official orders from the Nirvana Pavilion and requested that he not interfere. The captain, unimpressed, stepped closer and asked mockingly what they planned to do if he didn't comply. Daryong responded firmly that disrupting an investigation would result in everyone's arrest. Captain Go laughed, his derision clear. "I'd like to see you try," he sneered. At this point, Muguk interrupted with a polite greeting. Extending his hand for a handshake, he introduced himself to Captain Go with a smile. As their hands met, Muguk tightened his grip until the sound of cracking bones filled the air. The captain's expression shifted from defiance to thinly veiled fear. Muguk leaned in and softly said, "Let us pass." Captain Go stepped aside without another word. As they moved on, Daryong whispered to Muguk, "How did you convince him to let us through?" Muguk smirked. "I broke his hand during the handshake," he replied casually. They ascended to the 7th floor, where the army commander's office was located. Another group of soldiers barred their way, stating that they needed an appointment to see the commander. Muguk sighed, clearly exasperated. Holding up the order document, he declared that blocking their way was equivalent to disobeying the cult leader himself. His words caused a visible ripple of fear among the men, and before long, a voice from behind shouted for them to step aside. The voice belonged to the demonic army commander, Gu Chenying. As Muguk and Daryong entered his office, the commander greeted them with an apologetic tone for his men's rude behavior. Commander Gu's presence was overwhelming. His demonic energy was so powerful that Daryong couldn't hide a slight shiver of unease. Muguk attempted to provoke the commander, but Gu Chenyang maintained his composure, his demeanor calm and calculating. "Why have you been tasked with this investigation?" the commander finally asked. Muguk explained, "It's a punishment from my father." "Punishment?" the commander echoed, raising an eyebrow. Muguk elaborated, admitting that he had made a small mistake during a recent hunt. The commander chuckled at this, but his tone quickly shifted to seriousness. "Why has the Nirvana Pavilion initiated this investigation again? Is it because of another anonymous letter, like before?" Muguk nodded. "Yes. We'll handle this quickly," he assured the commander. Commander Goose smiled faintly and replied, "We'll do what we can to support your efforts." Muguk expressed his gratitude, and the commander offered to arrange accommodations for them during their stay. But as they prepared to leave, Gu Qinyang's expression turned grave. "Be careful," he warned. Muguk paused, narrowing his eyes. "Are you referring to the incident with the previous investigator?" The commander chuckled but gave no direct answer. "Not exactly. Just stay cautious." As Muguk exited the room, he caught the sharp, assessing gaze of the commander following him. A knowing smile crept onto Muguk's face as he realized the deeper implications of his father's decision to send him here. Clearly, the mission was meant to ensure that either Muguk or the commander didn't leave this situation alive. Back at the Demon Pavilion, the Demon Lord examined his sword as Sima Myung voiced his concerns. "I should have handled this investigation instead of Muguk," Sima said firmly. The Demon Lord responded, his voice calm but firm. "Muguk said the cult has lost the demonic path." Sima's eyes widened in surprise. "Is that why you sent him?" "If he dares to speak so boldly," the Demon Lord replied, "then he must prove himself." Sima glanced away, his face lined with worry, but he chose not to press the matter further. A dead crow hung ominously in the hallway, causing confusion among the men, who immediately began blaming the Nirvana Pavilion. Muguk noticed that those who had blocked their entry earlier were the loudest complainers. As tension simmered, a tall man strode toward Muguk and introduced himself as Jang Ho, the Third Corps commander of the demonic army. Daryong leaned toward Muguk, whispering that Jang Ho was reputed to possess the greatest martial prowess among the corps commanders and was infamous for his fiery temper. Muguk, undeterred, asked Jang if he had any complaints. Jang pointed to the dead crow hanging in the hallway and demanded to know why it had been placed there. Muguk replied calmly that someone from the demonic army had thrown it onto his bed, and he had assumed it was a cultural custom. Instead of laughing, Jang retorted that such behavior was inappropriate and suggested that Muguk should have simply punished the culprit. Muguk responded sharply, stating that if that were the case, he would start by punishing Jang himself. Jang's brow furrowed in confusion. "What are you talking about?" he asked. "The investigation," Muguk replied bluntly. He then ordered that all records pertaining to Commander Jang be submitted for review. Jang bristled at the command, refusing outright. "Not even you can order me around," he snapped. Muguk, unfazed, countered, "Yes, I can." Enraged, Jang slammed his foot into the floor, cracking it beneath him. Muguk calmly explained that obstructing the investigation could be considered treason. As tensions escalated, others stepped in to restrain Jang. However, Muguk remained adamant, stating once more that the investigation would begin with Jang. Reluctantly, Jang agreed, his fury barely contained. In a secluded room, the interrogation began. Muguk wasted no time, asking Jang how long he intended to continue testing him. Jang's face remained blank. "I don't know what you mean," he replied. "I know you sent the anonymous letter," he said firmly. Daryong looked confused and glanced at Muguk. "Why do you think he sent the letter?" Jang continued denying the accusation, but his silence stretched awkwardly before he finally spoke. "How did you figure it out?" he asked. Muguk explained, "You involved yourself in the situation even though you didn't need to. The only logical reason is that you wanted to avoid suspicion from the demonic army commander." Jang hesitated but ultimately confirmed Muguk's speculation. Muguk continued, pointing out how the Third Corps members neither laughed nor cursed when Muguk hung the dead crow. "They even stopped you because they were genuinely worried about you," he added. Muguk then mentioned a haunting memory from his past, an incident where the strongest corps commander in the demonic army had died. Jang sighed, admitting that he wasn't sure the letter would work, which was why he hadn't included explicit details. He also hadn't expected the second young master, Muguk, to lead the investigation. "I thought we were done for," Jang confessed, candidly. Muguk was taken aback by Jang's frankness. "You're saying that to my face?" Muguk refocused the conversation. "Tell me what really happened in the demonic army." Jang sighed again, his voice heavy with emotion. He explained that the demonic army commander had been using the army for personal gain. The commander had been accepting assassination contracts and forcing his subordinates to carry them out. Both Muguk and Daryong were shocked. Muguk had initially believed the commander was only taking bribes, but this revelation was far worse. Jang revealed another painful truth. The martial artist who had allegedly committed suicide after killing the previous investigator had been his close friend. That friend was also the first person to send an anonymous letter. We joined the cult together. He was like family to me, Jang said, his voice cracking. Muguk pressed further. Who do you think gave the order to kill him? Jang didn't hesitate. The demonic army commander. He probably ordered Godang to handle it. Muguk considered the implications. If what Jang said was true, the corruption ran deep, implicating the commander and possibly the entire First Corps. He wondered grimly if his father and Sima Myung were truly unaware of such blatant betrayal. The weight of Jang's loss was palpable, and both Muguk and Daryong felt the sorrow radiating from him. Thank you for your courage, Muguk said sincerely. Overwhelmed, Jang broke down in tears. His raw grief moved Muguk, who for the first time in a long while felt a flicker of hope for the so-called lost demonic path. Resolving to make a difference, Muguk silently vowed to ensure that Jang would live this time. After all, the purpose of his regression was to save those who had perished unjustly. Alright, that's a wrap for today's video. Thanks so much for watching, and as always, stay awesome, keep reading, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.